by Dave Schwartz. And so Dave Schwartz calls his wife June because he knows that Jordan Chandler is a massive Michael Jackson fan. There was one employee at Rent a Wreck who said that when June arrived, she was kind of forcing Geordie on Michael Jackson, almost like trying to emotionally blackmail him. And so that's how the numbers got exchanged, and they ended up staying in touch.
So a friendship develops between Michael Jackson and the Chandler family, excluding Evan Chandler. During this period, Michael Jackson would have stayovers at their house. They would come over and sleep over at Michael Jackson's house. Where is Evan Chandler during this period of time?
Evan Chandler was pretty much an absent father. He owed almost $70,000 in unpaid child support, and he had been rowing with June about how infrequently he was seeing his son. She was trying to get Evan to take Jordan more often, and he was refusing. He had his own new family, a bit like June did. He'd remarried and had kids with another lady, and they were struggling to get Evan to engage with Geordie. It was not until he discovered that his son was now friends with Michael Jackson that he suddenly became interested in seeing him again.
And that's how it leads to May of 1993. That is when Michael Jackson first meets Evan Chandler.
They seem to be getting on quite well, and Evan even at one point asked him to build an extra wing onto the house so that he could come and stay more often. And then when that idea didn't work, he said, well, I've got a better idea, why don't you just build me a new house? And then that didn't happen either. June dropped the bombshell that she and Geordie were thinking of going on tour with Michael. And then Evan, who previously had been an absent father who wasn't paying his child support and wasn't really interested in seeing his son, all of a sudden became enraged about the idea that Geordie would be out of the country for a few months. And that was where the relationship took a dramatic turn towards the negative. What had happened was Evan had begun making strange comments and threats to June and Dave and Geordie about Michael, that he was going to make allegations. He was behaving so erratically that they feared he was going to do something crazy. So the next time they spoke to him on the phone, they tape recorded him.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen to him. Beyond his worst nightmares. Sell one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want. They will be destroyed forever.
He's talking about how he's furious that Michael has stopped phoning him and stopped taking his calls, and how Michael has stolen his ex-wife and torn the family apart, and how he's plotting his revenge. And he says everything is moving in accordance with a plan that's not just mine.
And this telephone conversation occurred before Jordan Chandler made any allegations against Michael Jackson. And in this phone call, Evan Chandler alludes to a nasty attorney.
This attorney I found, I interviewed several, and I picked the nastiest son of a bitch I could find. Once I make that phone call, this guy is just going to destroy everybody in sight. Any devious, nasty, cruel way that he can do it. And I've given him full authority to do that. It'll be a massacre if I don't get what I want.
And the attorney he has hired is Barry Rothman.
My name is Geraldine Hughes. I was the legal secretary in 1993 for Barry Rothman, who was the attorney of Evan Chandler, the first accuser that came against Michael on child molestation. I was working for him. He hired me, and I came in for an interview one day, and he hired me for the job as his legal secretary. I was the only legal secretary for him. He was really an entertainment attorney, and he had a history of being a good negotiator in the entertainment field, though. Whenever Evan would call Barry Rothman's office, Barry Rothman would tell us to put the call on hold, and he'd walk all the way back to his office, shut the door, and that's how he took all of Evan's calls. He was the only client he did that for. Anybody else call, if he was away from his office, he'd just pick up the phone and say, okay, woo, say what he had to say, and then he'd hang up. But he didn't do that with Evan. Evan was always behind closed doors.
Evan had already retained a lawyer. Geordie Chandler was insisting that Michael had never touched him. Anthony Pellicano, who was Michael's private investigator, Pellicano goes round to interview Geordie Chandler and questions him for about an hour, I believe, and asks him all sorts of pointed and very direct questions. Have you ever seen Michael Jackson naked? Have you ever been naked in bed with Michael Jackson? Has he ever touched you, etc., etc.? And Geordie Chandler says no to everything. At the end of the conversation, Geordie Chandler reiterates that Michael's never done anything wrong to him and says that his dad is just trying to get money.
It started out a custody issue. Evan Chandler wanted the custody of Geordie because in order to coerce a child into saying something that's not true, you need time with that child.
Evan Chandler goes to custody court and says, I want to have a week of custody with my son. And June Chandler agrees on the basis that he will be returned after 7 days.
And he never gave them back. He kept them. He never brought them back. And during that time that he had him, he came into my office and he was behind closed doors with my attorney. The Geordie Chandler was. I actually opened up the door one day. I was leaving and I opened up the door and Geordie was in the back and he kind of looked a little startled because I looked and I saw him and I was like, nobody in the office knew that he was even there. You know, we were like, how did he even get here? And I opened up the door. So I had a few encounters with Geordie Chandler coming into the office, and to me, it just looked like a coaching session.
While Geordie was in Evan's custody, Evan sedated him with a drug called sodium amytal, supposedly did a dental procedure, although it's a very dubious story that he's telling there because there's no reason to use sodium amytal if you're doing a dental procedure. He gives him this drug, which has a reputation in the 80s as a truth serum. Problem is that sodium amytal, just in 1993, the evidence was just coming out that sodium amytal had been wrongly used as a truth serum for years. If you look at journals today like Psychology Today, they say it's completely false that anybody ever considered a truth serum. It just wasn't.
Right.
What it did was it made people massively suggestible. You could administer somebody with sodium amytal and then plant an idea in their head, and when they woke up, they would believe that it was true.
So I'm just going to take a step back for everyone. Evan Chandler makes a phone call to David Schwartz talking about he is going to make allegations against Michael Jackson. Jordan Chandler denies all allegations. Evan Chandler gets custody of Jordan Chandler and never returns them. It was supposed to be only for a week. And during this period that Evan Chandler had Jordan Chandler, there were numerous unethical methods that we know of being used against Jordan Chandler. Notably the use of sodium amytal and the coaching, the one-on-one coaching between Jordan Chandler and Barry Rothman. So by the end of Jordan's stay, he changes his story. He went into Evan's custody saying that he wasn't abused by Michael Jackson, to now claiming that, yes, in fact, I have been abused. So Charles, with this new shocking statement by Jordan Chandler, what are Evan Chandler's next moves?
So after Geordie changes his story, Evan, instead of going straight to the police as you would expect a parent to do if their child had said that they'd been sexually abused by a man, he instead goes directly to Michael Jackson and his legal team and starts demanding $20 million.
But Evan had a desire to be a filmmaker. He was trying to get the money so he could make a movie.
His lawyer gets in touch with Michael Jackson's camp and says $20 million and nobody will ever hear about these allegations. Michael Jackson is adamant that he is not going to give Evan Chandler $20 million. So the counteroffer, which comes back, a deal for 3 scripts. Mm-hmm. And they say you'll be paid $350,000 per script.
He said, I'll contribute that to your film project just to give you and your son a chance to mend. Because at that time, Evan was saying he's stolen my son's affection. He put that in the paperwork. He said, my son is being starstruck by this superstar. He's stolen my son's affection. And so Michael just simply said,
this will be a great opportunity for you and Geordie to reconnect because you'll be able to write them together. Rothman come back and say, you're nowhere near what we're asking for. That's less than $2 million. You know, we're not going for that.
The next offer that comes in from Jackson's camp is one single payment of $350,000. This amount shocked Barry Rothman because it was even lower than their first offer. So by now, Chandler and Rothman figured out that Jackson camp was not serious about negotiating. So Evan Chandler